Gurmaigat Count Corla. Taoiseach, this morning the striking Debenham workers occupied stores in Dublin and in Cork. And they did so after more than 150 days of campaigning for fair treatment from the company that has treated them in an appalling manner. The company, as you know, simply shut up shop and left workers high and dry. Initially, they were left with only basic state supports and the prospect of statutory redundancy. And I am sure that you understand the anger and the frustration of those workers at this time. The liquidator, KPMG, has now withdrawn the offer that it proposed to the workers. I think this is a very provocative action, especially when you consider the duration of this dispute and when you consider everything that the workers have been through. Taoiseach, I've raised the issue of the Debenhams workers with you before. I asked you on that occasion to act immediately, to intervene in support of the workers and to legislate so that this disgraceful scenario can never happen again to another worker. And you said at that time that you would do everything that you could do to help the workers. So, given what has unfolded today, including the arrest of some Debenham workers here in Dublin, I want you to set out what it is that you have actually done. Taoiseach, figures released by the European Commission today show that Ireland is second only to Spain in terms of jobs lost in the second quarter of this year. So a lot of people have lost their jobs and a lot more will lose their jobs. And that's what makes this Debenhams dispute so important for every vulnerable worker, because this is, in fact, a test case for your government. You gave a commitment that the government would review company law that leaves workers in such awful situations with a view to amending it. I want to know, where is that review at? And Taoiseach, that the government acts now and stands up for workers and legislates in their interests isn't only important for the Debenhams workers, it's important for every worker across the country. The COVID emergency has brought great economic turmoil, and many people now look with a level of nervousness and uncertainty, particularly as the government plans to curtail and cut the pandemic unemployment payment and the employment wage subsidy scheme. And you may say that this is very complicated and complex, but you also know that you have options available to you to protect workers and to prevent rogue companies from treating their staff in such a disgraceful way. We in Sinn Féin have published legislation to stop unscrupulous employers using tactical insolvencies to avoid their obligations to their workers. You could support that legislation. The Irish Congress of Trade Unions has outlined a statutory scheme for the protection of redundancy payments. The Duffy-Cahill report presents a range of measures that government could support and adopt in legislation. So you have options, Taoiseach, but you have to now demonstrate the political will to stand on the side of workers. And you need to start with the Debenham workers today. You need to intervene directly on their behalf. I think you should lift the phone to them at this time where they feel very vulnerable and very left behind. I think you also need to raise the phone to KPMG and to request that they enter back into engagement and negotiation with the workers. And you see, it's not good enough for government to stand idly by while workers who have given years, in some cases decades, Taoiseach, of loyal service, give service like that only to be abandoned. It's not right that these workers have had to stand on picket lines for months and months on end. So you need to act now, Taoiseach. Will you lift the phone to KPMG?
Thank you. Taoiseach.
First of all, I have to say that the treatment of the Debenham workers has been very, very shabby and shoddy and unacceptable. And I've made that point on a number of occasions. Notwithstanding the difficulties that the parent company was in or is in, the failure to honour the collective agreements that these workers had entered into is, in my view, unacceptable, and the manner in which they've been treated unacceptable in terms of the performance of the company. I've met with the workers on a number of occasions, both in the Taoiseach's office and indeed on the picket line as well. And they were very exercised and focused on getting a practical outcome to the present dispute, which is difficult. Now, last week, as you know, particularly last Friday, there had been progress or indications of some progress in discussions between Mandate Trade Union and the liquidator towards a deal that could be put to the workers in the ballot. I know Sinn Féin welcomed that announcement and welcomed the fact that a proposal had been put to the workers after agreement had been reached between Mandate and the Debenhams liquidator. But the nature of that offer clearly was unacceptable to the workers on the ground in terms of the amount of overall funding that was made available, and then when it was divided among each worker, paled into relative insignificance in comparison with what they would have expected if the collective agreement had been observed. Government has communicated its views to the company. Was an examinership to parent company in the UK, not coming forward with any resources to assist in this situation. In my view, what has to happen now is all sides to get back around the table. We've kept in close contact with Mandate in relation to this dispute and the continuation of this dispute, and also in relation to efforts to try and bring about a resolution to it. And Mandate will tell you, as anybody, to be fair, it is challenging in terms of trying to work out a satisfactory package for the workers involved. The government has committed to reviewing company law more generally to make it, to render it impossible into the future. You can never render it impossible. Very difficult for companies to, as you use the term, tactically create situations of this kind. There's a range of, for example, separating assets from trading income, and these loopholes have to be closed. And our view is to take a supportive stance on behalf of the workers. I met with ICTU last week, and I met with IBEC as well. I spoke to ICTU at some length as well on this issue, particularly on the legal side, or on mechanisms that perhaps could be deployed to try and assist the workers at Debenhams, but also more generally in terms of situations into the future. So that is the position as of now. I think we need to get all sides back to the table, to get dialogue opened again, to see if some package can be put to the workers in terms of what's available out of that liquidation process, which is beyond the government's sphere of influence legally.
And we know, Taoiseach, that Debenhams wasn't the first offender in using these kind of tactical insolvencies and the different loopholes that you've described. We will all recall Cleary's and the Cleary's workers, and we will remember that the political class at that time said this must never happen again. Well, guess what? It's happened again, and it will happen again and again over time, not just in the retail sector, but also elsewhere, unless those loopholes were closed. So, Taoiseach, with respect, the time for reviewing is over and the time for action is now. When will the law be changed to protect workers in these situations? Secondly, you say that the workers and all parties should get back around the table. What table, Taoiseach? What table do the liquidator, the company, the workers, their union, what table do they return to? Can you please set that out for us? Engagement is absolutely essential. The industrial relations machinery of the state has run its course. That's over. And we are now dealing with this deeply unjust situation where workers who have given decades of their lives and of service have been essentially thrown on the scrap heap by Debenhams. And you do have to intervene, Taoiseach. You absolutely have to intervene with the liquidator and others and tell them to return to the table. What table will that be, Taoiseach?
Well, the same table you just alluded to. You know what we're saying. talks should begin. There should be dialogue again between the key interests here. You know that there was ongoing work by Mandate in particular to see if they could do their best in difficult situations to arrive and to realise some package for the workers. You know that. You welcomed it last Friday, that there was a result of that engagement. However, the scale of that engagement was not sufficient, clearly, to meet the workers' desires. Understandably, it didn't even get to ballot. In my view, KPMG, the liquidators, and others should engage in dialogue to see if that can be improved upon that package, and if we can do the best we possibly can for the workers. That's what I think is of immediate relevance to the workers. What we shouldn't do to the workers is to try and pretend to the workers that we can do everything and work out a perfect solution. I think there's been a lot of false dawns painted for the workers by others over the last number of weeks, which I quite frankly don't believe to be helpful.
Thank you, Taoiseach.
Because there are real legal constraints in terms of a liquidation process. You know that. I know that, in terms of it being under the oversight of the High Court and so on. So there are real difficulties here. There's no point in sort of throwing them to one side or dismissing them. I'm interested in seeing how we can help the workers as best we can. The government will come forward, obviously, with the statutory redundancy and all of that. But I think we just have to focus on what can we get out of this desperate situation, very unfair situation for the workers. I salute their courage. I salute their perseverance. They've kept at this now for a long, long time. I've met them. I have nothing but admiration for them. And that's why we will do everything we can to support them in any way we can. And in terms of the review, that company law review group, the Taoiseach asked them to expedite their assessment of this, and that will be finished at by quarter 4 of this year.